I used to think there were two boxes in the world. The box where fiction lives, monsters with rubber teeth, blood that washes off under a tap, and the box where reality lives. A little dull, a little cruel, but navigable if you keep your head. Then one night, a clip landed in my inbox with a note that said, "Don't watch. You can't unwatch." I didn't press play. I pressed pause on myself. I stood in my kitchen, listening to the rain, asking a question I'm still asking. What do we do when the story knocks from the other side of the screen and says, "I'm real and I was made for you"? Hello, Wanderer. I'm RuModd. Tonight isn't a campfire. It's a cold steel table. And I should warn you, this story will be heavier, more serious than usual. No images, no audio, no links. I won't guide you to it, and please, don't go looking. We're going to talk about a thing without feeding it. If you need to bow out with my blessing. Take care of you first. People online call it many names. The one that stuck is the Vietnamese butcher. Some call it 13K. It surfaced in 2025, not as a leak of an accident or a battlefield, but as a product. Edited, bundled, priced, distributed in private groups and darker marketplaces. A filmed killing offered for money, like a movie. A word we used to treat like an urban legend snapped into focus. Snuff. Let me be plain about the ethics before we go further. Watching real death for thrill or curiosity isn't research, it's supply. We're not doing that. We're looking at the room around it. Who built it? Who walked in? Who paid the power bill? And what it says about us. The victim has a name. Nguyen Xuan Dat. Before the footage, there was a person, years of late-night posts that read like sideways prayers. Under different handles, he drifted through fetish boards and fringe forums, workshopping a single idea that surrender and violence could be the same door. He wrote plainly, sometimes painfully, about feeling ugly, unwell, and tired of being alive, about wanting a beheading, not as shock, but as consummation. He curated mood boards of execution motifs, saved Iroguro panels with guillotines and ritual calm, even asked for help translating a Japanese piece, sometimes titled Applicant for Death. It's hard to tell where performance ended and crisis began, but the through line is clear. He was building a narrative in which his own ending would look like art. Offline, Dot's life looked smaller, rougher. Family listings placed them on poverty rolls during the pandemic. Friends said money was tight. He did market jobs around Hanoi for a while, then slipped back into the rooms where words move faster than help. On January 25th, 2025, he posted a countdown, 3 hours until the execution. On June 10th, a final sign-off, "From today I will permanently be off this account." The dates are macabre, not because they're spooky, but because they feel scheduled. The figure who kills him, the butcher, doesn't arrive like a monster out of folklore. He's anonymous by design. A cheap plastic mask you've seen 100 times, a dark tracksuit, the kind of posture that reads as practiced restraint rather than rage. On his arm, a small tattoo, numbers that look like a date or a private code, flashes and disappears as he moves. Nothing decorative, nothing theatrical, practical, almost boring. That's the part that chills. The room is painfully ordinary. Tiles, counters, those big glass jars you find in Vietnamese kitchens for herbal tonics. Yet it's been prepared in quiet ways. Surfaces cleared, space made, props reduced to what the camera will recognize. It feels less like a crime scene and more like a set someone tidied for a single purpose. There are more eyes than one in the room. You can tell from the way the vantage shifts, a main angle that holds, a secondary that picks up when the first would miss a hand, a shoulder, a signal. No flashy edits, just enough coverage to keep the story continuous. In one earlier segment, call it a rehearsal, the victim kneels, places his neck where it's meant to go, and the cleaver grazes skin without intent. There's a pause, a hug. They speak softly in Vietnamese. Roles are agreed without ceremony. When the act begins, it's timed disturbingly to intimacy, the moment of release becoming the cue. The strikes are decisive and targeted. There's no flailing, no heat. It's done with the steadiness of someone who treats the body as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be fought. The camera does not look away. What follows is colder. He moves from killing to processing, breaking the body down into large sections, arranging and stacking what remains with the unhurried cadence of a butcher who has done similar work on other days in other rooms. He pauses now and then to adjust a device, to ensure the next angle still tells a clean story. In a later montage, a dish appears on a table. The old jars sit in the background, like silent extras. People will make them mean more than they show. They always do. Afterward, the violence becomes media. The footage is trimmed into a neat bundle, multiple clips with stills pulled at telling frames, the rehearsal kept as an overture, file names, counts, a sliver of sales copy. It slips behind doors most of us never open, invite-only channels, tiered VIP access, coded menus promising extreme packs, whispered prices, sellers bragging about head counts. For months, it stays gated like a premium filter until the paywall fractures and the thing spills into public spaces where moderators chase shadows and mirrors multiply. That's what shifts it from the bleak catalog of war propaganda or cartel terror into a different category: profit as motive, entertainment as frame. This wasn't a tantrum recorded. It was a production mounted, and then a product taken to market. Now, the internet did what it always does. It named, it hunted. Someone saw the tiles on the floor and said, "Those are common here." Someone recognized a region in a voice. Someone looked up herbal tonic jars. Someone found old posts, old usernames. Quickly, the victim's identity became more certain. The killer's identity did not. The forums did their dangerous dance, merges and overlays and doxes and the smug confidence of strangers. A name trended. He denied it. Photos didn't match a tattoo. Another name popped up, maybe out of spite. This is where I'm careful. I'm not going to put a civilian on the altar of an algorithm because a thread with high upvotes thought his jaw looked similar. If you've been on the internet long enough, you know the ritual. Moral panic, bad detective work, collateral damage. I've seen it before, I'll see it again. We're not doing it here. What matters is that the killer is unconfirmed as of this recording. What matters is he or they planned the scene like a production. What matters is that someone, afterward, appears to have used Diat's social accounts to watch the ripple, taunting or tidying or both. What matters is that in the absence of a name, we're left with a mask and a market. In the days that followed, someone appeared to slip into Diat's accounts, watching the ripple from behind his name, replying here and there like a ghost with the password. Whether it was the killer or an accomplice hardly matters. The effect was the same. The performance didn't end at the cut. It lingered in the comment notifications. I keep thinking about consent. You can almost hear the internet clearing its throat to argue, but he wanted it, Mr. RuModd. He wrote it. He begged for it. There are precedents where a person volunteered to be harmed in ways that make courts sweat. Here's the blunt truth. The law does not accept consent to one's own murder. Ethically, neither should we. A person in the grip of a compulsion, a death kink braided with depression and self-hate, is still a person. The right response to "kill me" is never "how much for 11 clips and 98 photos?" It is "no, and you need help." If you've ever been someone's last late-night text, you know exactly what I mean. That is where community should stand. That is where we failed. Because there was a community around this. He wasn't screaming into a void. He was conversing in forums that tolerated, sometimes encouraged the fantasy. Most of those people would never act. But you don't need most. You need one. The internet magnifies this math. In any city of 1 million, there are 2 people whose desires interlock like cursed gears. In any network of 100 million, they will find each other faster than we can build guardrails. Let's talk about why people watch. Not you, don't panic, you're here for the story. But zoom out to the subculture of gore. I've lurked long enough to know the rhythm. First time, nausea. 10th time, numbness. 100th time, novelty seeking. They'll call it reality, unfiltered, seeing the world as it is, while scrolling past 100 survivable fates to hunt for one that feels transgressive enough to light up the limbic system. I'm not judging from a pulpit. I'm saying the brain is a trickster. It will sell you desensitization as courage and curiosity as a calling. And somewhere, quietly, it will move the line of what you think you're capable of consuming or becoming. What is the line? For me, it is here. When a death is made for me, as a product, as a consumer, my eyes are a currency. I refuse to spend them. Let's build the timeline simply. Years before 2025, Dot wasn't only confessing online, he was composing. Under aliases like Dot Beheading, he drifted through niche groups, posted little prompts that read like stage directions, and stitched together reference boards, photos, manga panels, notes about angles and atmosphere, until the fantasy started to resemble a storyboard. So when January 25th, 2025 arrives, his post doesn't feel like a cry into the void. It reads like a call sheet. And the June 10th sign-off lands less like disappearance and more like end credits written in advance. In early months of the year, in some room that looks like any other tiled room where people wash dishes and boil water, a scene is staged. There are cameras. There is a mask. There is a man who believes this is the end he's meant to have. The act is recorded from angles, edited, bundled. It is marketed in private spaces. It circulates for months behind invite links, payment screenshots, crypto top-ups, sellers bragging about VIP. Then, in mid-year, it leaks past the gates. Public channels repost, gore sites mirror, moderators delete, mirrors multiply. A major outlet writes about it, not to share, but to say this exists. Vietnamese social spaces go cold and loud at the same time. No official press, but 1,000 posts. Fear, fury, prayers that the killer is found, warnings not to click. People in Hanoi say, "I'm scared." Someone posts a photo of a random man and calls him the butcher. Someone else says, "Stop, you've done this before and you were wrong." The victim's family, somewhere, has to live inside this storm. There are rumors of other cases, maybe copycats, maybe unrelated. When something breaches a taboo, echoes follow. If you've ever studied horror as a genre, you know Snuff has been a myth moth circling the flame for decades. Whispered, dramatized, debunked. We said it didn't exist because it didn't make sense. Why would anyone risk prison to film a murder for entertainment? Because the internet taught would-be producers something the VHS era never could. There is always an audience. There is always a seller's market if you go low enough and deep enough. And there is plausible deniability if you sit behind a dozen layers of encryption with 100,000 strangers. So what do we do with a real one? What do we do with the knowledge that the old myth climbed out of the projector and asked to be rated out of 10? I saw a comment where someone numb to gore gave it a 4.5/10, like a bored film critic. That's not me scolding a person on the internet. That's me showing you what happens to a nervous system when it turns catastrophe into content. Jokes become armor. Armor becomes skin. And then it's hard to feel the right things at the right volume. There's also the other extreme, conspiracy. There's a syndicate. There's a cult. They're recruiting. Maybe there is a network that treats humans like livestock. Maybe there are only 2 men in a room and 100 opportunists selling the file. Our minds prefer a cabal because a cabal is a monster with a face. 2 men in a room is worse. It means the parts you need to make this, despair, cruelty, profit, are common household items. Law. You want law. In many countries, ending a life with consent is still murder. In some, homicide of this kind is punished by death. Distribution of real death media can be charged under obscenity and cybercrime statutes. But law is slow, and the internet is a swarm. Take down one channel, 10 pop up. Ban one seller, they rebrand and forward the same zip. If this gets treated like a one-off, we'll miss the structure, the platforms, the payment rails, the social dynamics that make it lucrative. If it gets treated like a panic, we'll trample the wrong people. Somewhere in the middle is patient, boring work. Follow the money, prosecute the tangible, build better guardrails, and teach people to walk away. Let me talk to a smaller audience inside our audience. People who share Dot's fantasy or its cousins. You exist. You write me sometimes. You tell me you are tired and that the thought of vanishing in a dramatic act feels like the first clean breath you've had in years. Please hear this. You deserve gentleness that does not end you. Fantasies feel like fate when you are drowning. They are not fate. There are therapists who will not pathologize your kink and will still keep you alive. There are hotlines answered by someone who has sat in your exact 3 a.m. and came back. If you can't call a stranger, tell a friend you trust, "I need you to hold me on the phone for 10 minutes, no questions." If you have nobody, leave a comment here that just says, "Here." Our wanderers see those. I see those. I said at the start I didn't press play. That's not a virtue signal. It's a boundary I drew with a Sharpie because I know myself. My curiosity is a clever animal. It will tell me this is journalism. It will tell me I owe it to the truth. It will push me 5 clicks and call it courage. I choose to let the horror exist without letting it into me. I choose not to be a unit in someone's analytics or a customer in someone's invisible store. I choose to tell you the story in a way that keeps our eyes and our heads and our humanity intact. If the killer is identified, I hope the case is handled in daylight, real charges, real consequences, not rumor and revenge. If copycats are tempted, I hope they meet walls and not wallets. If the platforms involved tell you they can't do anything, ask them why they can do so much to sell you shoes and so little to keep a murder paywall from thriving. And if you feel that itch, that awful fascination that says, I want to see if I can handle it, let me be the annoying friend who says, your capacity to feel is not a muscle that needs to be broken to grow. Protect it. You will need it for the people you love. You will need it for yourself. Wonders, whatever the world calls you, to me, you've been utterly spellbinding.